Alright, so to be able to manipulate your gradients, it helps to tear off the live paint tool. It's under the shape builder tool here, and you just go to this little arrow at the end and tear it off, because you're going to be using two different tools in here, the live paint selection tool and the live paint bucket. So when you are building gradients, you go to the gradient palette, which if it's not already open, as always, you go to Window and choose Gradient. And then you click on the gradient slider, and that will activate the gradient as your fill. And then you can open up your swatches. It might help to shrink these windows up a little bit. There we go. Let me move this up so you guys can see it. So, with your swatches, you can drag other colors into your gradients, and you can either make your gradients kind of really strong and wild like this one, or you can make them really subtle. If you have people, then you might want to just take a few different flesh tones and get rid of the black and white. And even just two or three tones that are close to each other will really give the illusion of some depth and some shadow. So imagine this wasn't a panda and was a human. See how on the left you have lighter color and then it goes from the darker. So you can change that and control that by where these colors are as well. So if you wanted it maybe lighter in the middle, I can hold down the Alt key and duplicate a color. So maybe I want it to look like the light's hitting in the middle and there's shadows on the side. That would, for people, that would really give the illusion of some roundness and depth to their face, or anything that you want to appear a little more three-dimensional. Because we're working in vectors, we're working in flat graphics, but you can still give some illusion with using the patterns that we showed in the last video and controlling the gradients. So that's how you adjust them. There's also some adjustments up here under type. You can have a radial gradient, which is round. Okay. And there's other adjustments here, the angle of your gradient, the aspect ratio. But the easiest way to control it, you can also turn down the opacity, but the easiest way to control it is with the live paint selection tool. So that's next to or under the live paint bucket. And what you do is you click on that, and then you click on the area that you want to control, and it puts this little mesh grid. And the really nice thing about this is that I can have several different areas with the same exact gradient pattern in them just by using this tool. So, you know, if I want all of the pieces of my panda to be the same, then I click on the live paint selection tool. I click on my first area, and now I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to click on the rest of the areas that I want to be the same with this gradient. And you can do this to fill in solid colors too. If you have a bunch of areas to fill in, then you might want to do that to fill in the solid colors as well. This is where it really helps to have your navigator open, because as you notice, the only bad thing about this little mesh screen is it makes it harder to see what's going on with your gradients, but in my navigator I can see it really well. So after you have your live paint areas selected, then you go to the gradient tool over on the left, not the gradient palette window, but the gradient tool. And what that allows you to do is now, I want to first, because the areas are different, I want to first click onto my gradient that I want to use. And you'll notice what it's going to do at first is each separate area has the gradient repeated in it. So because it's radial and it has that circle in it, every area has that circle in it. If I don't want that, then that's when I go to the gradient tool, and wherever I click and how far I drag determines what the gradient does. But because I have multiple areas selected, they're all going to work together. So when I let go, you'll see now in my navigator, and I can even take my navigator, and this is when it helps to make it a little bit bigger so you can really see what's going on with your gradient. Now. And so now you see all of those areas are behaving as one with the gradients. So I could, you know, looking at this, I think, you know, maybe like the dark spot right on his nose. So where I click will put the center of the gradient, and how far I drag will determine how long the gradient goes. So if I only drag a short way, then I'm going to have a much shorter gradient. If I drag, medium, it'll go there. So you can play around with it and really start to see, like, when I click at different places, what different effects do I get? And you can really use this to give that illusion of depth, of three-dimensional quality. And then once you're done, you just click on your regular selection tool, and then you would have your controlled gradient. So this is a nice way, again, to manipulate more than one at a time. Looking at this area down here, I think it would work really well with a gradient in it. So if I came down here, and you can also, if you have a specific color in your fill colors, you can also drag that in so you can still make your own colors for your gradients. But I could take this color right here for the tree, and then maybe I want to make this one linear, not radial. Use the gradient tool to then control it. So again, if you click at the top and drag down, it'll give you a different effect than if you click at the bottom and drag up. So play with it when you're manipulating it and see exactly what you want it to do. So see, I can give the illusion that there's kind of a shadow on the front of this. It's not doing what I want it to do. So you just have to experiment. It's too dark. There we go. So then you get something like that really has some depth to it. And that is how you control your gradients in Illustrator.